Oh my god, it's Wednesday. It's Streamcast/podcast day, which means the Seahawks FanTable is back for the offseason. Welcome, gentlemen.
Greeting.
So, it's been a while since we've been online. We're just fans, so we don't do the hardcore, like, all-season, off-season kind of thing, but we're here to talk about some off-season football.
Damn right we are.
So, I don't know how you guys are feeling, but got a couple exciting things happening. Apparently the schedule's coming out tomorrow, so that's going to be exciting.
Tomorrow?
Woohoo.
Tomorrow.
Yeah, tomorrow at 5 p.m. I think that's West Coast time.
Really?
Yeah, because they're going
to...
Yeah, because it's a primetime thing, so that means they can put it on like NFL Network and stuff. So,
man, that's a massive like ego to think your schedule announcement's like a primetime event.
They better not do that shit during Two Broke Girls.
We're going to take a commercial break for the NFL schedule.
I don't know if that show's on tomorrow anyway.
But NFL schedule's coming out. OTA started, so we've got players showing up. We have they're voluntary. We have players not showing up. Players that are in trade talks. Maybe they're going to be traded. Maybe they're not.
Do you think we have as many players at OTAs as the Patriots had at the White House?
No, because the Patriots only had like 30-something players at the White House, and that's like 20 plus that weren't there.
Holy crap! That's got to be a new record.
Well,
I'm sure it is.
Well, what's crazy is they showed when they won the Super Bowl under George W. and they had like 36 players then, and now under this last visit they only had 34. So if you're on Twitter and if you're watching the Patriots Twitter feed, they're going pretty heavy that there has been no change in the number of players going to the White House under George Bush or Trump. But if you look at the photos that the Patriots went to after 49 when Obama was president, there's a couple photos floating around that makes it seem like the crowd or the people going is a little bit larger. So
quite a bit.
Yeah, so some alternate facts or maybe some hard-hitting news. We're not really quite sure. I really don't care.
Fake news.
Yeah, fake news. Maybe alternate facts. We'll see. But we got the Seahawks. We've got OTAs and a couple things we want to talk about. We're going to talk about a little bit more in depth, but we do have OTAs. We're going to talk about free agency, what we've seen so far, and let's kind of talk about OTAs. So currently there's 5 defensive players that are not at OTAs. There are offensive players.
Name names?
Yeah, so Sherman's not there, Bennett's not there, Earl's not there, Cam's not there, and Cliff Averill is not there.
Yeah.
LOB.
Yeah, so the defensive starters that are there are Bobby Wagner and KJ Wright. Jaron Reed's going to be there, so those are the starters from last year that are still with the team. Frank Clark is there, another guy that was pretty much a starter because he rotated in so much, but that's it. That's maybe not even half of your defense is missing from your OTA. 2 of them are coming off injury. You've got Cliff Averill that did some off-season surgery with his knee, I believe. You have Earl Thomas that's still rehabbing, but he's showing his workout videos on Instagram. So there is reason for some of them, but Cliff Averill, he's currently in Haiti right now, building houses, doing really, really humanitarian things, and some people are not quite cool with that.
Well, I'm not.
See, that was a cheap shot. I'm gonna say that's a cheap shot because now if we say like what we want them to be, then now it seems like we're like, yeah, don't give those Haitians a house.
But you'd be surprised. You'd be surprised. There are people out there that are saying, why didn't they schedule that the week before?
Well, I'm saying that.
But
I want to hear Zeb's talk because Zeb's our what's that guy? He's the 7'10" players guy. Who's that guy? G. Scott. Is that right?
Yeah.
Gil Scott here.
I see Zeb as our G. Scott, like power to the players kind of guy. So I want to hear Zeb talk before I say anything.
About Cliff Averill building houses in Haiti instead of being in OTAs?
The whole thing in general. What's your impression when 5 starters don't show?
That's fine. It's April. We haven't even drafted yet. I'm not worried about it.
Okay.
Well, Russ, why don't you tell us why you're upset? And for those that are new to the podcast, I'm Sam. There's Zeb and Ross. Sorry for not introducing ourselves.
I never care, and Ross is always upset.
So Ross, why do you care? What is the reasoning behind the importance of going to a voluntary off-season camp?
Okay, and I mean, okay, you're gonna back me into the corner, right? Okay, I think it's a bit disingenuous, and I think it's a bit hypocritical. I think like if you're the type of person who talks about, for example, in 2012, where you're like, we had 100% participation in the off-season program, and you're gonna brag about that. You're implying it has meaning, right? You're implying it there's some benefit to that, tangible or intangible. You're saying it's a good thing, right? Or if you want to talk about Russell Wilson being first in the building and like last to leave every day for practice, and you're saying like, look at what that shows, and like look at that dedication. And I think it's a bit disingenuous to then turn around and say it doesn't mean anything at all when they don't even show up. Oh yeah, it's voluntary. You're right, it's voluntary. You know what? But so is showing up an hour before practice and staying 20 minutes after practice. And you're saying on one hand, that's a really positive thing. And look at what the dedication that shows. And look at that commitment. Look at the commitment to team it shows when we have 100% participation. But then to turn around and blow it off and say, oh, it doesn't mean anything if these people don't show up. And then look at the names. Look at the names. And isn't that sort of like that? You get the sense that's the cool kids on the defense that hang out together. And they're kind of making that stand together. And I think they're saying something. Yes, he's in Haiti, and yes, he's rehabbing. But you know what? If you can rehab and you can show your videos on Instagram or whatever, I don't read the internet, guys.
Tyler Lockett's coming off a major injury. He was there.
Yeah. Sorry?
Tyler Lockett's coming off of major injury. He was at OTA.
So I just think it's a bit disingenuous to pretend that, or to say that it's very, very meaningful that when you have 100, like to brag, like literally, like brag to fans of other teams. You go like, you know what? We got 100% participation almost every year in our OTAs, and then this year we don't. And then you're going to turn around and say that like it's all a coincidence, and this time it doesn't mean anything. We don't.
I don't think it's the fact that
I know we haven't drafted, and I know all this other stuff. And I know you can work out just as much as in the gym in your house, but if you're going to say it means something as a sort of like a mental, even as a kind of like a mental check of where you're at in when you're doing it. It doesn't mean anything if you're not.
I don't think it's a yes or no kind of thing. I think there are definitely shades to this, because the way that I look at it is the 5 guys that are missing from camp that voluntarily decided not to go. The way that I look at it is they were not the reasons why the Seahawks were 10-5-1 last year. If the
you don't think Richard Sherman had a bad season last year?
He had an off year for maybe what I expect out of Richard Sherman, but he was still a top corner in the league. So there are shades to that. But let me finish. There are shades to that, and what I would say to that is, those aren't the guys I'm worried about. Yes, if they were there, that'd be sweet. I don't feel as if we're going to lose anything when they show up 4 weeks later once rookies show up and they show up after the rookies. If they were the offensive line guys, like if Justin Britt said, oh, you know what, I'm not going to off-season voluntary workouts, I'd be like, first off, you're the center, you're dealing with multiple rookies, you're dealing with 2 guys that are going to be different to the right and left of you, you need to be there. If it was the wide receivers, like Jermaine Kearse saying, like, oh yeah, I'm not going to OTAs because, I've got better things to do, I would be more upset with those kind of players because of how they performed last year. With the way that Sherman, Averill, Bennett, Cam Chancellor, and Earl Thomas played last year, they played at a high enough level. I'm not worried about them being burnt out. I'm more worried about them making sure that they're rested and healed for actual practice, for actual games, for actual meaningful contact.
Yeah, I think that when we, in 2011, 2012, 2013, we were a young team, and I think it was more important for this kind of stuff. I don't think either way. I don't think Sherman didn't show up to OTAs in April, we're not winning the Super Bowl this year. You know what I mean? Or vice versa. Or everybody's there, we're a shoo-in. Like, neither of those things are true. But I think our veterans who do need maybe a little longer to heal up now than they did when they were younger, and it's the very first OTAs, voluntary, people have other stuff going on, I'm okay with it.
You don't think there's any statement at all? You don't think it's a coincidence? You don't think like there's anything to the fact that it's? I mean, I could get political here.
No, there could be. That could be a thing. If that's a thing, then that's a thing, and that's a whole different conversation, in my opinion. But as of right now, we don't know that it's a thing.
When I see we're going to talk about it later, but when I see the Lynch situation, and when I see the Sherman situation, then I see who's not coming. I'm a little. I think it says a lot about the NFL today. I think it says a lot about pro athletes today, and I think it speaks to volumes. I think it's. Yeah, I don't know, man. Like, because
here's a question.
I don't disagree. I don't disagree with you there. I do see that perspective, and I understand it, and I agree with it. I'm not ready to get all upset and up in arms over.
I get that. I mean, you guys are exactly right. I mean, it's not like Richard Sherman needs 20 more extra jumping jacks this offseason to make sure we get to the playoffs. I mean, that's not what I'm talking about, but. Those are, conversely, yes, those are the guys who still played pretty well last year, and like those are the leaders on the team, and that's the whole point, isn't it? Those are the leaders on the team, and they're not showing up.
So here's a question for you, and this is true not only for this year but for previous years.
Right.
Have you ever gone back in time and said, you know what, after this 2017 season ends, or after the 2016 season ends, or 2015 season ends, or when they won the Super Bowl in 2013, did you ever go back and say, you know what? We won or lost because of the absence of a player. No one will go out and say that. There's a slight chance that maybe something was done there, but it's so infinitely small, it's not really fretting about it. But I understand what you're saying, though, Ross. I understand what you're saying, though. There's a message, there's a meaning behind being there. Physically being there has more meaning than actually what they get out of actually being at the camp. I believe that that's true, but I also don't think that these are the guys that we have to worry about yet.
But that means they're also not there to be leaders. It's not just that they're not there, so they're not practicing. They're not there. Who's leading the defensive back group this time? Not the coaches. Who's the player who's at the voluntary camp that's leading the defensive backs? Who is it? The guy who just signed. What's his name?
Do they need a leader in April OTAs?
Yeah, you always need a leader. When are you in a group, you don't have a leader. You always have that.
Well, let's do this. Let's talk about the new guys, though. Let's talk about the new guys, and let's see if there's anyone here that would be the leader. So that's going to bring us to topic number one.
Can I say one more small tiny point?
We'll bring it into topic number one, because we're going to try and keep this precise and concise.
We got to move along.
So topic number one, we're just talking about off-season moves. So we've only really lost 4 people off the team. So this list was comprised of all the people they've signed. We've got 2 kickers, we've got offensive linemen, we've got tackle, we've got running backs, we've got lots of linebackers. So I'm not going to go through the list. If you're online, you can see the video. But we've also lost not a lot of guys. One person that the Seahawks lost that is maybe worth talking about is Gary Gilliam. I actually want to start with this, and then Ross, I want to get back to your point here. So Gary Gilliam was tendered with the lowest tender possible. It was about 1.4, but it wasn't guaranteed money. If he signed with another team, which he ended up doing, he signed a 1-year deal with San Francisco for a fully guaranteed deal. He wants to become a free agent after this season. And what had happened was Seahawks chose not to match. And because he was an undrafted free agent, they don't receive any compensation. We had, hold up one second. Matty Brown, he wanted to know, should the Seahawks have kept Gilliam? How big of a loss is his departure? I'll answer this real quick. I don't think it's a big loss at all, because he, at best, was maybe a spot starter at right tackle. At worst, he was the 4th guy in rotation. So not a huge loss.
He was a 2-year starter.
Yeah, but he was a 2-year starter that lost playing time to Bradley Sowell. So I mean, I don't think it's a huge loss just because of what their current plan is, and if their current plan works, then it's going to be really great. What about you guys? Do you guys see anything of the off-season moves that excites you or makes you feel happy or concerned about?
I guess I'm talking first. Well, Blair Walsh is looking like he's probably going to be our kicker. John Lunsford is the other one they brought in, and I'm like, I don't know if Blair Walsh is like mentally recovered from when we broke him, or he broke himself in the playoff game. Last year he had permanent yips, and so he lost his job. So I'm a little bit worried about place kicker. I'm hoping they know what they're talking about. And as far as Gary Gilliam, it seems like basically it seems to be a slight contradiction, because they're saying Ifedi is now going to be the right tackle, and he was a right guard last year and not very good.
Yeah.
But I mean, there's a learning curve, and maybe after another offseason program, he's going to be better. But it just seems to me like they're trusting the crystal ball a little bit more than I'd like to. But again, with the cap situation, you can only spend so much money. Gilliam is just another guy, and for 1.4, I suppose you can go get another guy, hopefully. And the thing is, I've heard that this draft, I'm not a draft guru at all, but I've heard this draft isn't a great one for offensive linemen. So I'm a little bit concerned, but at the same time, it's not like it's the end of the world when you lose a guy who's on a scale of 1 to 10, like a 5.5 or 6. So,
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of been a pretty meh offseason as far as free agency goes for us, right? Like, I think Eddie Lacy obviously is intriguing because when he's on, he's really good, but he's not always on very often or healthy or in shape, right? So there's lots of question marks there. I think Dion Jordan is intriguing. Lots of potential that hasn't materialized in the league. So, he kind of a Chris Clemens type of player. Hopefully we can kind of get the best out of him here. And then the same thing, Bradley McDougald, safety that we got from Tampa Bay. He's an intriguing guy.
Yeah, I like him.
But I don't see anything on the lists of guys that we got or guys that we lost that worries me or excites me too much.
We got Cyril
Gilliam. What's that?
We got Cyril Grayson. He's like,
you're right. I should have thrown a party. I forgot to throw that party. Gilliam doesn't bother me. I don't. Whatever. He'll always have a special place in my heart for catching that fake from John Ryan in the championship game against the Packers. But other than that, I don't think he's anything special. So I don't think he makes the Niners any stronger.
No, not at all.
Quick question: what does it say that we let Kelsey McRae and Johnson go?
Well, they technically haven't signed with anyone else, so it's not like they're cut off. But
that's who we went into last season thinking, like, if our main guys get hurt, these are the guys we're turning to, and they can't even get jobs, man.
Yeah, but what I'll say to that is part of the Seahawks plan, and that's what every team has to do. And Seahawks have to do that even more so now, and I think we're seeing this with the fact that every person signed, except for one guy, has signed a 1-year deal. Blair Walsh, Luke Jokel, Eddie Lacy, Luke Wilson, Deshaun Shedd, Ode Ubuoshi, Arthur Brown, Bradley McDougald, John Lunsford, Michael Wolford, Terrence Gavin, Dewey McDonald, Cyril Grayson, and Dion Jordan. All of those signed 1-year deals, which are... And the only one that actually got any money was really Luke Jokel and Eddie Lacy. I went into the offseason saying, I want at least 1 or 2 offensive linemen. We missed out on TJ Lang. We got Luke Jokel and we got Ode Ubuoshi. And I said I wanted a running back. We got Eddie Lacy. I would have liked Latavius Murray because he was a little bit younger. But Eddie Lacy, if they want to try and go to a power run game, even though they don't currently have a fullback, I think that's very suitable. So I'm very happy with just the fact that they did those 3 moves. Everything else is just kind of a plus. So, but the reason why they have to do that is because they've paid so much money to their core guys, they can't really spend a lot of that money. Like, if they signed TJ Lang, half of the guys that they picked up, they probably wouldn't be able to sign. They might not be able to get a Dion Jordan for a cheap deal if they had signed TJ Lang. As minimal as Dion Jordan's contract is, TJ Lang takes up a huge contract. He takes up 4 or 5 guys that they just signed off of the street or re-signed.
Well, I mean, they do a good job with that. They value the guys that they put the price tag at what they think somebody's worth, and if they can get him for that price, they get him. If they don't, if they can't, they don't. So that it's really easy to go into panic mode or to reach, not even with drafts but with money. But I think you got to stay disciplined, and I think they do an awesome job of it. So good. It's a good thing I'm not the GM, because I would have been like, we need anybody in offensive line and all of it.
Ross would have signed all the offensive linemen he could find.
Yeah,
traded Cam Chancellor too.
Yeah, you know what? Looking at the draft. Who's that safety in the draft?
Which one?
There's a really, really good. I forget his name.
Menchire?
So, they're saying there's like a once in a generation safety. That's the evaluation on him. I'm like, see, you trade Cam Chancellor, you pick up that dude because he can play both safety positions, and then you save a lot of money.
Yeah, but they got Bradley McDougall. Bradley McDougall is the guy that intercepted Wilson on the last drive when they were trying to come back and beat Tampa Bay. So,
yeah, I don't know.
Positives.
I'm just saying, like, I'm happy with that signing.
All right, Ross, let's go back real quick to your topic about OTAs. So we talked about the guys that are on the team. We talked about the guys that they did not retain. How does that factor into the OTAs? And to answer your question, I don't think any of these guys are necessarily leaders. You know, these guys are all looking for second chances.
Right.
Deion Jordan and Luke Jokel are perfect examples of Seahawks second chance players. This was the number 2 and number 3 draft pick from, like, the 2012 draft class. Yeah. They didn't get a second contract. That's huge.
Yeah. You just look at the guys that signed. Like, you can't. None of these guys, like, they're not in a position. Like I think of them in the locker room to be leaders. Like when Deion Jordan walks into the locker room, people are like, "Oh yeah, he was like such a high draft pick," and completely burned out. You got to like kind of start all over again. You don't have a lot of cred, I think.
Yeah.
No, you're probably right. Yeah, but it's going to take some. Definitely going to depend on the personality type. How they're going to stand.
I mean, Lacey and McDougall are different, but Lacey and McDougall are different. But Lacey, I don't think we're hurting it. See, the thing is, like, get Eddie Lacy in there, and here's the one bad thing I don't really like about him. So I don't know if he's got like super, 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 super serious work ethic, and that's kind of what we need, like, Rawls to develop. I would have maybe preferred like a one of the super, just slightly less talented, but like one of those guys who kind of got through his like hard work and sweat kind of guys, not just because he was born with a giant body.
Well, we know Pete and John well enough to know that if he doesn't work his ass off like he's supposed to, they'll just cut him.
Yep. Yeah, exactly.
He could be a lesson right there for the young guys.
Lendo White 2.
Yep.
Yeah. I don't know. Well, we'll see. I mean, I don't.
So here's another question for you, Ross, about leadership. Do the Seahawks need a leader in the secondary? Is that something that is needed with the 3 strong personalities that they have in Chancellor, Thomas, and Sherman?
Well, that's what I'm saying. I mean, like, those guys aren't there. So you've got all these guys coming in, and you're telling like Nico Thorpe to be like the guy who's gonna, because a lot of it's not just the coaches. Right? Other people have to step in and give advice and be the person who like sprints from one practice from one area of the practice to the other, and the one who like gets there a little bit early and stays a little bit late, and is the one who's like, when it's not even film based, in the film room, and it's kind of teaching the young guys, because it's a super, every single team gets paid. Every single team is all professionals. It's like Russell Wilson says, the separations and the preparation to get where you want to be in the NFL. You have to be that team that everybody's on board and everybody's taking those small, extra, tiny steps that don't seem important at the time, but they all add up to the differences. There's really in normal life, like if you watch like a 12 Cleveland Brown guys sitting around a table and 12 Seahawks, there's nothing different. They're both amazing. They're all amazing athletes. The difference is who practiced a little bit more, who took the mental reps a little bit more, who was ready for that situation. And it all matters at this level, in my opinion.
I don't disagree with you, but I think there are levels and areas and times to apply that work and to apply the effort. One thing that I'll close with, and we'll move on here, is we both went to training camp last season, and the one thing that we both highlighted was Richard Sherman is talking up every single corner who's coming to the sideline. After every snap, he's running to the field, he's in the huddle, even when he's not playing. And we noticed that, and we talked about that extensively. I don't know yet if that has changed, but that leads us into our second topic, and that is, how do you solve a problem like a Richard Sherman? Is this a ripple effect of Lynch and his departure and his re-emergence? Ross, you and I we had a long text conversation back and forth about the merits of Marshawn Lynch as someone who retired, who caused the Seahawks to take a $5 million cap hit last year. There's rumors about him coming back. It's been going on for almost since he retired that he wanted to play for Oakland. There's rumors abound about him coming back as soon as possible. The fact that John Schneider and Reggie McKenzie are like best friends from their days in Green Bay, and they're both now the GMs of Oakland and Seattle respectively. So I want to give you the first off. What do you think about what's going on with Richard Sherman, and what are the factors of Marshawn Lynch? Does that have any impact with what we're seeing?
I see them as separate things, but I think I see them as symptoms of something I don't think I could put my finger quite on. There's an element of the team that seems, I think the early success in 2012 and 2013 maybe kind of gave people a sort of sense of entitlement, or maybe it's a kind of a good thing. I don't know. I think everybody expects to be at the Super Bowl every year, and that's where you should expect it in a sense. And the fact they haven't got there for a couple of years, it seems to have kind of disenchanted some people. I mean, Sherman was very, very tough to handle last year, and Marshawn Lynch was kind of openly defiant of a lot of the front office and the coaches, especially in his last 2 years. And how do you solve a problem? It's hard to say, like, how do you solve a problem like Sherman? Because I don't know what the problem is. He's not happy with the team, but even in the two quote-unquote off years we've had, we're still second out of the playoffs. I mean, it's, like I said a second ago, every other team out there, they also get paid, like, to play. They're not just going to roll over on you. It's not just a matter of you doing everything right. You have to you still have to beat the other team. And I don't really know what's exactly making him unhappy. There's been indications he went after Bevel again last year, 2 years later, about the same playing call in the Super Bowl. And I've heard it's about one person say that it's about money. He wants more money. I don't know. I don't know how to solve the problem because I don't know what the problem is. And I don't have a good finger on it. He's unhappy generally with Seattle, but I think, again, he's only ever been with Seattle. He thinks he's unhappy with Seattle. You want to go to Oakland, you think you're going to be happier there? I mean, they've straightened up since Al Davis died, which is sad to say, but they're still Oakland. I don't think you're going to be happier when you get there and you see the environment of the team there. I don't think some of the players know how good they have it, and I think grass is always greener is really, really in effect right now for a lot of the players. So again, I don't know how to solve the problem because I don't know what the problem is. I don't know what Sherman's unhappy with. Does anybody?
No, in fact, I'm right there. I'm right there with you because I don't know what the problem is with Sherman. If it's just a money thing, then I guess I get it. That's how that happens all the time.
Right. Yeah, it does. But who's going to pay him more, especially after an off year?
Right. But when have we seen a player be upset that it's this much of an effect on the team or on the fan base based on if he doesn't like Bevel's play calling? I mean,
the thing is, he's a defensive player. Like, dude, do your job.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's crazy. Like,
yeah.
If for some reason it turns out that Bevel is that big of an issue that the defensive guys want to leave because they don't believe that he's going to call a good enough offense to win, then they need to do something about that.
Yeah,
I've never seen that before. I'm
of two minds, and I one is like suck it up, like let them handle it, and we know Bevel can win the Super Bowl because he's done it. And he's been to back-to-backs with, but at the same time, I do feel that as well. Like, if this is so traumatic for the remaining players who experienced it that they can't get over it on defense and, like, it's causing open rebellion, and is that partly why Marshawn Lynch even retired, well, then I guess it's really, really not fair. And I think it's a slightly – I think there's a danger to doing it, but maybe you do have to make a change just for the fact that you have to regain the team. Because it feels to me, and that's why I've kind of been hinting at this whole time, I think they've slightly lost the team. And I think there's some entitlement to that. I think that's some of, like, the new, younger people's generation kind of thinking to a bit spoiled, perhaps. I don't know. But if they are open rebellion, almost, despite everything they've got good, I don't know.
Yeah, if that's something that's happening, then Pete has a responsibility to fix that. Or I mean, it all comes back to him, right? Like,
Right.
if your players are unhappy because one of your coordinators isn't performing up to par, then you better take hold of that situation and get it right.
But part of it makes me feel like those players need to get over it. I mean, not get over it. You never get over a Super Bowl loss like that. Fans don't. Certainly, players are never going to get over it. But what I mean is, you have to, he's doing his job. You do your job. Everybody does their job right. But I guess if you lose all faith in him.
Well, I totally agree with you, which is why part of me thinks that that's not the issue at all.
So what do you think it is possibly?
But I don't know. That's what I'm saying. It seems like it's one of those two things, right? Either it's money or it's him being unhappy with something within the team, the coaching.
I think. Do you think it is the money? Do we think it's the money?
I don't think it's money, and I don't think
have we even heard from Sherman himself? Has he said, or is
No.
this all reports we've got?
It's a lot of reports, and I think what we as fans are not used to is we're not used to a player and the front office saying, like, yes, we've talked about trading them. Yes, they've talked to me about being traded away. It's part of the business. We're not used to that kind of transparency. We're not used to that level of honesty from any team. The thing that we are raised to understand as fans is rumors and actual reports. And we live for rumors because we rarely get actual things reported. There's so many times where we hear as a fan, oh, TJ Lang is 99%, he's going to sign with Seattle. And all of a sudden 1% Detroit, and TJ Lang's wife, they make the final offer and he's in Detroit. I think a lot of this is here. But a lot of this is what we're seeing. We haven't heard, because no one's able to really ask explicitly, do you guys want to move on from Richard Sherman? Pete Carroll and John Schneider said, look, yes, we're open to trading everybody, but we haven't gotten a trade that we're going to take, and it's probably not going to happen. That's not enough for people, and that puts enough doubt in enough people's head to say, oh, well, they're not telling us the whole truth. And that's, I think, what we're accustomed to. We're accustomed to information being withheld. And I'm willing to take Pete, Sherman, and John at their word, where they're saying exactly what it is. Sherman says he loves to play in Seattle. He wants to play with his brothers, as he said. Pete and John both said they don't think a deal is likely because they're going to ask for the moon for a guy of his talents. So I think that's the way that I look at it, and I'm probably very different from a lot of people. But you either have to accept that they're either withholding information from you and they're underplaying it, or they're being 100% transparent. And everything that I have understood to them as a fan is that they're more transparent than they are willing to hide information when given that kind of opportunity and given that level of insight. And then
maybe they're just playing up the drama.
It could be, but also you add that into the Lynch factor. They've been 100% open about that, and so he hasn't reached out to us yet. We haven't heard anything, and Marshawn has gone on social media and said you guys don't know anything. When something happens, I'll let you know. And that was reported. What was it?
Oh, come on, that's disingenuous. To be able for Marshawn Lynch to be able to actually even talk to Oakland, that means he had to actually ask Seattle for permission to talk, because otherwise it's against all kinds of rules and laws. Marshawn Lynch to even be able to talk to Oakland to get to the level they're at right now, where even Seattle says the deals are essentially in place. If Oakland can reach the contract with Lynch, to get to that point, Lynch actually at some point asked Seattle for permission to talk to Oakland, and Seattle said yes, go talk to Oakland. Otherwise, he couldn't even go in that office. But we know he went in that office. He can't even talk to them until he has permission from Seahawks. So it's not a rumor. It's not like a.
Oh no, I'm not saying that the Lynch stuff is a rumor, but what I'm saying is it's a different level where they're still providing all that information. Everything that John and Peter said about Marshawn Lynch has been 100% true.
When did John Schneider come out and tell us today, by the way, we gave Lynch permission to go talk to Oakland? They never said that.
No one's ever asked them that directly, and they've never reported on that.
Well, I mean, I don't know. Well, again, if you're not going to ask the question, you're not going to get the answer. And to be honest,
but they're not. But they're not open. They're not open. John and Pete are not available to the beat reporter could go in, but they haven't had a camp. Now the OTAs, I'm sure we'll have them actually ask that question directly. But it's not a question that's been directly raised, as far as I'm aware.
He did a John Schneider, 2 weeks ago, 2-hour interview, an hour interview on Cairo. I mean,
And the
They could
question
have-
was,
I was about to say, like, Seattle, I got to say this one small point, having lived in a few different big cities. Seattle's media is kind of a bit notorious for not asking the hard questions. In some ways, I respect it, like, as opposed to, like, the New York media, which seems to always be trying to bait somebody. But the Seattle media is kind of famous for, like tossing the softballs.
we're just chill out here. What can you do?
I mean, like, that's that Seattle politeness, isn't it?
Yeah, the Seattle Freeze.
Yeah.
All right, so let's get back to this. Yes or no? Is Richard Sherman going to get traded?
No.
Let's do a percentage.
No. Yes or no? Play 51% is leaning one way or the other.
I think it's a more serious situation, more likely than you think it is, but I think it's going to be no because I think it's very difficult to do trades in that.
So I'm a no, and the reason why I'm no, playing into what you're saying, Ross, is that the Seahawks will not get value knowing that Richard Sherman is going to play. This is not going to be a Cam Chancellor situation. Now, it could be about money, but everything that Richard Sherman is about competition. I think him, Earl Thomas, and Doug Baldwin are probably like the three most competitive people on that team, and I think they're three of the better players on the team as well. But I don't see money becoming an issue with Richard Sherman. I don't see him being traded because the Seahawks will not be able to get anything of value in return. That's where I stand. Second question. Is Marshawn Lynch going to play for Oakland next year? Yes or no?
Yes.
You have to say it again. The audio feed went out on my phone. I'm sorry.
Marshawn Lynch, is he going to play for Oakland next year?
I'm going to say no.
This is where, Ross, I wish I could play percentages because my heart says one thing and my head says another. But I'm going to go with no. I'm going to say you can't take a year off football and come back. It's too hard. The sport's too physical. As good of a shape as he's been keeping himself in, it's not the same level. I would love to see him in Oakland because I didn't grow up in the era of hating the Raiders as you guys probably did because I'm just a little bit younger. But I think it would be cool for him to be able to play in Oakland. I don't see Seattle stopping him from going if that chance presented itself.
Yeah, I agree.
Third question, then we'll move on. And you guys feel free to ask questions yourself. If Marshawn did play for Oakland, would it be cool for a Seattle fan to buy an Oakland Marshawn Lynch jersey?
No.
No.
I'm going to say yes. I'm going to say it's cool.
Oh, God. What? You're going to kick yourself off your own podcast.
I think it's okay as a piece of a collection, sure. As a collector's item, yeah, fine.
I would never wear it to a Seahawks game, but I think it's cool.
Yeah,
can I ask this? Can you see a 49er fan buying a Seahawk Jerry Rice jersey? Seriously?
If they did, they'd be crazy because Jerry Rice is nowhere near as cool as Marshawn Lynch.
I bet that's happened. I bet you there is some guy somewhere who's a 49ers, a hardcore Jerry Rice fan, and he's got his Seahawks jersey.
That's but you just kind of said the key phrase there. You're almost a Jerry Rice fan at that point. You're not really. It's like my early days as a Seahawks fan until like 1983, 84. I was probably a Jim Zorn fan more than like when David Craig took over. I was like making voodoo dolls and sticking needles in David, trying to get him hurt so Jim Zorn could play again, man. Like I was a Jim Zorn fan and maybe a Steve Largent fan, and then I like the Seahawks too. But yeah, I mean, but if you're like a 49er fan, you don't buy a Jerry Rice jersey in a Seahawk color, do you?
I mean, if you have a collection,
maybe you bought an Oakland Raiders Jerry Rice jersey too.
Yeah. And plus it's also here's the other difference. Like Marshawn Lynch said if you're a Seahawks fan, he said to you like, I won't play for you. Like you could give me $9 million this year, and I'm not going to play for you at all. I won't play for you, but I'll go and play for Oakland for $3 million. Really? And you're going to be like, oh, that's cool. That's cool to disrespect my team like that.
I don't see it as a disrespect to our team. I see it as he's probably wanted to play for the Raiders his whole life, and he's saying, well, hey, I got an opportunity to do it. My one last chance.
I didn't see him lining up to give the money back, though.
Yeah, but I don't care about the money. So
yeah, and Russ, that's a big part of our discussion. Our big communication was about the business aspect of it, And my thought was,
you can't. It's a business.
It is a business, but the way that Seahawks and Pete Carroll and John Schneider have built this team is to take care of the players that deserve to be taken care of. And
right, but that's a two-way street. Has to be a two-way street.
It has to be a two-way street.
Otherwise,
but are you trying to tell me that at any point Marshawn Lynch did not give 100% to the Seahawks as a team?
Yes, and he got paid for that at the time, and the team took care of him at the time, and the team protected him at the time. But when he started screwing over the Seahawks, why are we still obligated to still be like all in favor of him? Like, well, I don't understand that. Once you start saying you're like, you owe me this money for not playing, essentially, but then I'm going to say like I'm only going to play for one other team, but I'm not going to. I'm not actually retired, but you're paying me because you assume I'm retired.
But you're talking about money that is on paper spread out over 2 years, but he got it paid out already.
We would get $2.5 million back
if they released him
on the salary cap if they went after it, right?
If they released him.
How much did we not just pay for? What's his name? Gary Gilliam, 1.4. I mean, like, so you're talking about, so we can get an upgrade over Gary Gilliam, but you're not going to because you want to like value player loyalty when they're not being loyal to you. I think it's WWBD. What would Belichick do?
Belichick would have cut everyone like years ago, so we wouldn't even have this issue. He would have spited them and traded them all to Cleveland.
If that $2.5 million or whatever was that important that we're not going to be able to get somebody that we want, it'd be a bigger deal than it is.
And they would have done it. They would have done it last year.
Well, here's the thing. Here's where I agree with you, Sammy. I agree it's great and there's lots of intangible and tangible benefits down the road if you are like very, very pro player and you take their sort of side to things. So like when he retired last year, you don't go after the bonus. That's totally cool for me. I 100% agree with that policy. But then he turns out a year later and says, I'm unretired and but only if I can play for the exact team I want to play for. But I was still happy taking your money last year, even though I'm not entitled to it because I'm not actually retired and you were gracious to me, but I'm not going to be gracious back to you. Then it's a different story.
I chalk it up as I don't care. I think that's what it is. I don't think he adds value to the Seahawks now. Like, as good as a player as he potentially could be for Oakland, I don't think he adds value to what Seattle wants to do, and I think they need to move on from him. So that's why I don't care.
Here's a question. Well, I already know the answer, so I'm not going to answer the question.
No, answer the question.
If Sherman was somehow traded, for example, tomorrow, and all of a sudden there's $12 million more in cap space we have, and now Marshawn Lynch says he wants to come out of retirement, and you're like, you know what? We just got $12 million in space. We'll keep you. Then what happens? Like then you can play actual real hardball. But you wouldn't want to.
No, I don't think. I think you've already moved on. You've got CJ Process. You've got Eddie Lacy. You've got Alex Collins. You've got Thomas
Rawls. If we said they had $9 million in cap space today, it's too late to use it. We're not gonna have it. We're not gonna need it. So you could actually keep Marshawn on the roster and see how long and play a game of chicken with him. I part of me wants to see it, man.
If the front office was like $10 million is worth it to bring Marshawn Lynch back for a year, and then he was like, I'll take $10 million, then sure. But I don't know. It's not a very realistic scenario. So
it's not. But I'm just saying. I mean, I guess here's the thing. Like, I really, Marshawn Lynch is not my favorite guy ever. But I really, really, really respect him. Really, really liked him. But I guess towards the end, his antics kind of warm. I'm like, you know what? Like, why? You don't keep pretending the media hates you, because after all this stuff, the media started to love you, and they do all those little comedy skits with you. Like, but you still can't be an adult and talk to the media for 3 minutes and give a real answer. Like, be an adult.
Yeah, he was consistent though. He was consistent.
He wasn't consistent.
He was.
Look,
because
if you grew up rooting for the Seahawks, and then you got into the media and you went and got a job covering the Browns for 10 years or so, and then you moved on and you covered the Dolphins and the Falcons for a few years, and then towards the end of your career, you could go back and cover the Seahawks for a few years for less money than what the other teams might be willing to give you. Would you do it?
Yes.
Yeah. Again, that's not the entire situation. I mean, this isn't a guy who this is a guy who towards the end of his career in Seattle one game wouldn't go into the house, wouldn't go into the locker room. This is the guy who like constantly. I mean, again, and the team stuck up for him all the time, constantly made excuses for him, constantly defended him, and I don't think he's really treated them fair.
I think they got everything out of him that he had to offer. They got everything out of him as a player that they could have. I don't think he's going to come back, and if he does, it's not going to be at that level that we remember him at. So I don't think it's worth worrying about.
Well, that's the thing. I don't even think is at the end of the day. I don't think when it comes to I don't think I really don't think so.
All right, let's move on. So let's go to topic number 3. We're going to talk about the Homer Corner. So this one is what Seahawks signing, departure, or trade fills you with fan emotion? And it could be positive or negative. So Zeb, I'm going to hit you off with this one first. Is there any off-season movement, transaction that you were like, oh, I like this. This feels
Are we
me with
talking
something.
this off season?
We're just talking about it as a fan. What was the one move
Like,
that you saw that were like,
Just
oh yeah,
any off season.
yeah? Could anything like before the regular season starts?
Oh yeah, I mean I hated watching Golden Tate go. I got emotional about that. Watching Hasselbeck go, I got emotional about that. I cried when Max Strong retired.
Yeah.
You cried?
Yeah, I was watching Max Strong videos the night he retired, and I got a little misty. I got a little teary-eyed.
Someone's leaving
like, wow.
onions around your computer, I see.
Even as far back as 1989 when Steve Argent retired. Like he was my first favorite Seahawk. He was my hero, and just the thought of him not playing next season. Yeah, it was emotional for sure. I don't know that I've gotten emotional about us getting anybody. To me, it's always like a cautious optimism. But I get attached to the players for sure, and when they move on, sometimes I feel some type of way about it.
No, for sure. Ross, what about you? I'm sure when Zorn was traded away, that was hard for you.
When Zorn went to the Packers, man, I legitimately tried to be a Packers fan for a few months. I was reading, pre-internet days. I was reading the newspaper to get his stats and watching Monday Night Football because they used to during Monday Night Football show the game highlights during halftime, but there weren't a lot of highlights, and that was a devastating part of my life. It really was. I mean, it was a big emotional blow.
Yeah.
And a lot of guys when Largen retired, but Largen was a little different because I was a big stats guy when I was younger. And I collected slots and lots of football cards, and I was watching when he was younger, he had 1,000 yards every year on his football card, and then it started going down and down, and it was 700 yards a year, and I'm like, and I almost wanted him to retire rather than to be an 800, 700 yards a season kind of guy. I think one that kind of bothered me, and Sammy, I think you and I talked at the time, was when Hasselbeck left.
That was a rough one.
I was mad because I was the excuse even to get rid of him was we're going to bring in a whole other offense, and he and Tavares Jackson will know it better, and I'm just well, Hasselbeck went to Tennessee and he learned their playbook. You can't learn your play. Hasselbeck's a pretty smart guy. It's not like teaching him do a master's course in physics. It's football plays, dude. He's a smart guy. I thought it was a lame kind of excuse, and it wasn't even a view to the future because Tavares Jackson was also a bridge, and it was very rough. It was very hard for me. I didn't understand it on an emotional level. I didn't understand it on an academic level. I didn't understand it as a football level. I didn't understand it as sitting on the berm watching Tavares Jackson out there the first practice with Sammy going really? This is the guy, you know what? Even a beat up Hasselbeck is better than this guy.
But you know what's even crazier is that was when there was the strike or the lockout. I forget which one it was.
Yeah.
And it was a shortened off season.
Shorter time, yeah. The short off season, he can't learn the playbook. I'm why? He can learn it in Tennessee, but he can't learn it in Seattle. Something's in the water, you can't learn shit. I mean, what?
Yeah.
I don't know.
But
does anybody honestly believe Hasselbeck couldn't understand that playbook? Come on.
Now, to be fair, the Seahawks did offer him a contract, but he wanted a multi-year deal, and they only offered him a 1-year deal.
Yeah,
and it could have been one of those look, we're going to offer you a contract just to save face, but it's going to be way lower than what you probably want, so we were really telling you to go look somewhere else.
That's exactly
which probably what it was.
You kind of had to do. You need new regime needs a guy, and they know they're going to do so. But I don't know. It was hard for me.
So what I think about when it comes to off-season moves, one of the moves that I really think about was when Pete Carroll came to Seattle. We remember there was like 200 plus transactions. The two moves that really concerned me initially was Mike Williams and Lendell White. I was like, oh no, he's just going to bring in his USC guys. Matt Leinart's packing his bags. He's coming to Seattle. We're going to trade for him from Arizona. It's just going to be USC Seattle. I can't wait. Like, really, I was like, really, okay, Pete Carroll, you're kind of losing me right now. But then he cut Lendell White, and I was like, oh, this is interesting. This is different. I did not expect that. And there's been some speculation that was like a move. Like, they signed Lendell White knowing that he wouldn't practice so that they could cut him later on. And I was like, you know what? That's a really ballsy move, because what that showed me what that showed and what emotion that filled me was, oh, this is not going to really be a raw, like, everyone, let's have great feelings and we're all going to get along. It's like, no, he's treating this as a real football program, as a real NFL team. He's making the decisions that have to be made, because you can't have a 200-man roster for your football team. Each roster space is so valuable. And that's kind of what really, like, made me more excited about Pete Carroll as a coach. Because that move signified, okay, this is not just him doing something. And then you combine that with the fact that he cut TJ Houshmandzadeh after 1 year, even though he had, like, what is a huge cap hit. That was like another, like, oh, that's interesting. TJ Houshmandzadeh, I think he had like 800 plus yards or something like that. Nothing great, especially for the amount of money he was getting paid. But that was like another one of these moves that I'm like, okay, this is not the normal stuff that we've seen in the past. And then the last one I want to give you is when Mike Holmgren would not re-sign Cortez Kennedy. I don't know if it was so much that they didn't sign him because of his diminishing skills or they just couldn't work out a deal, but that was like my first remembrance of being a fan, of knowing that Cortez Kennedy was great and not understanding how great he was, but then seeing him not in a Seahawks uniform. I was really young at that time, and I was like, I didn't understand it, and it just, I don't know why, but it really made me upset, because when I was watching the Seahawks at the time, Cortez Kennedy was like the one guy I always knew. I knew his number. I knew that was like one of the best current Seahawk players, and he wasn't retained, and that kind of like shattered my world. And then he shortly retired afterwards. So those are the moves that I remember that filled me with a lot of emotion as a Seahawks fan.
Those are good ones.
Those are really good.
I didn't even think about Cortez Kennedy. Yeah, that's a big one.
Cortez Kennedy is like it's in that, how can I say? There's a gap in my Seahawks fandom when, like, I first moved to Japan in '96, and then for like 3 or 4 years, the internet was really slow at the time. I mean, you had to dial it up with your phone and things, and so it was really hard to get much information. And so, yeah, like towards the end of Kennedy's career and things like that, like I have this big gap.
Yeah, those first couple seasons under Holmgren is about the 2 or 3 years where I cared about girls more than football. That didn't last long.
That's understandable, though.
All right, so we're going to move on to topic number 4. Topic number 4 is a little bit more philosophical, so this is going to be right up Ross's alley. And the question is free agency a viable way to field a team in today's NFL? And we've seen this. You know, we've seen the Mike Holmgren era. We saw the 1 year of Jim Mora. And we've seen the current era of Pete Carroll. And, you know, if you want to go back, you can go to the Dennis Erickson years. But it's always been kind of understood that free agency is not always the best model. Yet, what we see with the Seahawks is very different from other teams. And maybe that's due to how good they are, or how well they scout, or how well they're able to retain their talent. But if you were a GM, do you think that free agency in this current model where you're paying players a lot of money, is this a really great way for teams to retool, to reload, and then get back in the fold? Because we do see a lot of teams go from 3rd, 4th place into a wild card or a first place seed in their division. Zeb, I'm gonna let you go first, even though Ross is the philosopher of the group.
Well, I mean, I don't know. I think obviously there has to be a balance. I think it's pretty necessary to use free agency as a tool. We do a good job of finding depth through free agency, that sort of thing. But, you know, you can't just build through free agency and then fuck off your draft, right? Like you got to got to try to do well in both. And we've seen the whole Dan Schneider like trying to build an all-star team through free agency doesn't work out very well most of the time. But I think if you look at the teams that have been successful, there's usually one or two key additions via free agency, or at least building some depth. And I think it's a very important part of fielding a competitive team in the NFL. But if you're asking is it more important than the draft, or is it more important to focus on free agency than the draft, then I think no, absolutely not.
Ross, what about you?
Trying to gather my thoughts on this. I think if you're trying to build mostly through the free agency, you've got two problems. One, that means you're not drafting well. And also, you're going to run into that problem where you're filling too many spots with too many players who need too much money. So, in some ways, it's nice because you're getting known commodities, isn't it? I mean, but again, you're going to run out of money too fast in the salary cap era. And it also, again, like I said, it's indicting your draft. But the opposite side, I think you can go too far the other way and say, like, we're absolutely not going to do anything with free agents. Like, Green Bay has not, Green Bay's underachieved mostly in the last few years. I think last year they had a good run, but mostly they've underachieved lately. And I think a lot of it's because they kind of went too far with it. We're not getting any free agents at all. I think Zeb nailed it. Like, but you have to do it really, really smart. There's two types of players I think you go. One is the depth bargain players that either are a glut position or not a glamour position, or a solid backup. And I think also you got to do the sort of like the money ball. Look for the players that are really, really undervalued at the position for whatever reason, like an attitude problem or an injury or whatever. I mean, our best pass rushers, like, they're mostly not homegrown. We brought them in, but we brought them in a really, really smart time where those people were willing to take like a prove-it deal for whatever reason, injury or bad year or whatever. It's like Zeb said, you just got to be, in today's NFL, you got to be really good at everything. You got to really nail your draft. You got to really, really nail free agency, but you have to have the right, it seems like you have to have the right philosophy of free agency. And I think here's kind of where, the Seahawks are kind of an exemplary thing. Like, we mostly go for depth and then one or two impact players maybe. The other good team, of course, and I keep going back to them, even though I hate them, is the Patriots. Right? They're masters, right? They get one or two really, really impactful players plus a bunch of depth. So that's where you go.
Yeah, I think the one thing is about free agency, it's kind of an indictment of how you are run as a franchise. If you're flush with cash to spend in free agency, it means your draft picks haven't been worth anything and you're not re-signing them to big deals. That's one big thing. The other thing is, if you have that much cash to spend, it means that you're spending it probably on the wrong players, so you're only keeping them for a year or two before you've got to jet them out and cut them, and then you just carry the dead cap for a while. So I think the thing about free agency, which is what makes football so great, is that it kind of gives this fake or potentially false hope that every team has a chance. But really, the draft is still king. The draft is really where you're going to be able to say, okay, you know what, we've got 5 to 7 contributors that are getting paid dirt cheap, and then we can bring in a free agent that can help them grow and learn, and then we're going to jet that free agent out, and then all of a sudden those guys will get into that second contract, and we're going to have to pay them money, and then we're going to grow with those players. But you look at the Seahawks, they're not losing, like, of all the people that they've lost in free agency, I can only really think of one who I was saying, like, you know what, I wish I had that guy back, and that's Golden Tate. So it's not like they're not losing guys to free agency because they're just, unwilling to pay. Yeah, they've lost almost their entire offensive line during free agency, but there's not any one of them that I would, maybe last year would have liked to have a couple of them back. But they're not like milestone losses for the Seahawks, right?
Yeah. Right.
So I think free agency, it's one of these great equalizers. It gives the identity and this feeling that there is a chance to make big splashes, to make it have really huge impacts. But ultimately, it's kind of a false hope, because you can be totally void of big free agent moves like we've seen kind of with Seattle and Green Bay, and also New England to an extent, and still be a top player in the NFL come playoff time.
It's funny because like you said, it's a great equalizer, and originally it was really meant to be, and for a long time it was, like, not a long time, for a while it was, when free agency was new. But now it's also funny because it actually in some ways can help the rich get richer, because Cleveland or Cincinnati even, or some of these teams, they have to pay more to get a free agent to come to them, whereas free agents will take they'll take less money to play with the Patriots or even Seattle sometimes.
Yeah, Danny Amendola is taking. Did you see this? Danny Amendola is taking like a $5 million or $4 million pay cut to stay with the team.
Right. I think like also like, players in certain teams also get educated better. I mean, like, they learn that sometimes it's better to take less money in a contract if you have a better chance to stay to see the end of that contract. What's the point of getting more money in your third and fourth year to go to Minnesota if you're not sure if you're going to fit in the team when you get there? The system's different. Maybe the players around you had more to do with your success than you thought. You go there, you get cut after the third year, and long term you make less money. Patriot team players and Baltimore players seem to understand that you stay with that team, take a little bit less money, but then you stay with the known quantity where where your performance is going to be at. You're going to see the end of that contract. So yeah, I mean, like, it just seems to actually add more and more to the have and have these days.
Yeah, and I think the fact that I don't know any numbers. I'm sure we could probably figure this out somehow, but I would say on average a player's peak would probably be around the age 25, 26, especially at the skill positions. Obviously there's positions where you kind of get better with age and smarts and wisdom and experience, but you're cheaper on your rookie deal, and you're young, and your body's in the best shape that it's probably ever going to be in.
And you're hungry.
Right.
Yeah.
I think that all weighs in, and all is a big factor in why the draft is and probably will always be more important than free agents.
I'd like to talk about that topic next week. I mean, is Seattle past their eye of the tiger phase?
Yeah, time will tell.
Yeah, probably.
All right, so we're doing a little bit short. We're only doing 4 topics this week, so we're going to go on to some fan topics and questions and a couple predictions. So from Twitter, Matty Brown, at Matty F. Brown on Twitter, wrote, should the Seahawks have kept Gilliam, and how big of a loss is this departure? We talked about that in topic 1. Coleman Crawford wrote in and said, can Ifedi be a serviceable tackle? And when is your boy Brown coming to the show? So Matty Brown from Inside the Pylon, he is actually going to be joining us next week on our pre-draft podcast. He'll be joining us from the UK, so really excited to have him here. Guys, do you have any thoughts about Jermaine Ifedi being a right tackle?
I hope he can do it.
I mean, he graded out pretty poorly. I mean, really poorly last year, but it's for me anyway. I mean, not having some of the technical knowledge of the offensive line that I'd like, maybe, but I guess I'm going on faith. I mean, if given the offseason moves they're making it or not making, it seems like Schneider and or Carroll really believe that he can make that move. I'm not sure they've always really evaluated the offensive line properly, but I mean, I have my doubts, but I'm cautiously optimistic. There's a right defense answer for you, huh?
Yeah, but I think it's about accurate, though.
Yeah, I think it's kind of weird that a guy that's playing inside is moving outside, when usually the idea is that if a guy starts outside and he's not as good, you move him inside. Kind of like you guys, I'm not an expert when it comes to offensive line, and moving from guard to tackle seems like you have to be able to occupy more space and push more space around. So it seems kind of weird that a guy who has a nasty streak to him, which I like, but doesn't seem to play in the best space possible, is going to be the right tackle. Now,
it could be a matter where like Seattle is famous for like evaluating players on a very, very small like individual movements, not just like overall as a player or like generally the run blocking. They look at like really, really individual pieces of their game, and maybe they figure that something about his play really does fit outside. So maybe he's one of the rare players that you do move outside from inside. Maybe they see something. Please see something.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it remains to be seen, but we'll see. And that is the off-season podcast. So, like we said, we're going to be back next week for our pre-draft podcast. We might have some news. Maybe some trades will be made the day before the draft. We won't know. We'll also have another draft, a post-draft podcast that we'll be doing the Wednesday after in the first week in May. Gentlemen, shout-outs?
Yeah, go to triplebpodcast.com and go to theidiot'sreview.com. Click things.
Yes. Check out the podcast. They're doing pizza this time around. You guys railed on a pizza place the last podcast.
Oh, it's the worst pizza I've ever had in my life.
We're not shouting them out, huh?
I mean, yeah, I don't know. I'm not going to put them on blast, worldwide, but...
Ross, any shout-outs?
I'm shouting out to you guys, man. Shouting out to you guys. No, like this off season, we haven't been doing a lot of this stuff. I've really been enjoying talking to you guys a lot this off season. So thank you.
Well, I appreciate you.
Yeah. Well, we are the Seahawks FanTable Streamcast. Thank you very much for checking us out. I'm Sam. They are Ross and Zeb. Check us out. We're at SeahawksFanTable.com. We're on Facebook. We're on Twitter at Seahawks Podcast. We're really excited. There's a lot of stuff coming up down the pipeline that we'll want to talk more about. But until next time, we'll see you next week. We'll talk about the draft, and go Hawks.
Go Hawks.
The Hawks.